We stopped our last lecture on medieval literature, and we studied about three poets or three writers. One was Caedmon, another one was Beowulf, oh, sorry, Saint Bede, and the other one was, the third one was Kinebul. And all these three writers made their contribution, and two of these made their contribution in Anglo-Saxon language, and Saint Bede made his contribution in Latin. And at that time, a point of time, three languages were being spoken in England. One was Anglo-Saxon, the other one was Latin, and these languages were commonly understood. So the third language was the language of the Britons, and sometimes they also this language is also referred to as the Welsh language, the people from the Wales, and they have their own language until now. And the people of Wales included at that time, there were people from Island of Man, from Ireland, from Scotland, and from Wales. These were the four people who spoke the Welsh language. And even today, if you hear their language when they are speaking in their uh, dialect, in their own dialect, you won't understand that they are speaking in English. It seems that they are just speaking in another language, which is unknown. And so I just want to do a little bit of recap because a lot of trouble was there in the last class. A lot of trouble with the voice, and some students who wanted to join the class but they forgot to join, and such such issues involved, and such issues were involved, and that's why now I'm going to give you a recap. Uh, and one more thing, I received a suggestion from some student that I should switch between English and Urdu because some things should be understood very clearly if they are spoken in Urdu. So if you have any suggestion in the like manner, then you can just please tell me here. You have three options: English, Urdu, and Punjabi. Okay, so I think that I'm not speaking any tough sort of English or any elaborated language which is not understandable. So let's start with the English thing. I want you to hear so much English because at the end of the day you have to appear in the interview, inshallah, and that interview will be in English, and there is no point if you tell them that you don't understand English, and they will just throw you out. Yes, they are very frank when they are angry, and they simply show the door. Okay, so going back to medieval literature, what are the important points which should be noted? The first thing is that this literature was called Northumbric literature. Northumbria is the land which is now known as north of England, and it was the place where Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, three of them, they joined the forces, and the Angles were more numerous than Saxons and Jutes, and that's why they outnumbered them. And later on, only Angles remained there, and that is why we call it England or the Angleland. First of all, it was Angleland, and then it became England. So the first known ballads of that time, which was written in Anglo-Saxon literature, was Beowulf. The author of Beowulf is unknown, and we don't know. We didn't never knew about this for the first few centuries, and it was later discovered on in about 17th century or in 19th century that they discovered that something was written, and the archaeologists they digged up the old documents, and they found out that during their digging, they found that there was a. When I say digging up documents, I don't mean that they were digging this earth, but they were digging through the archives that were present in the abbeys in the old churches, and they found out that there was a work known as Beowulf, and Beowulf was the I also gave you assignment of studying about Beowulf, and all of you know that Beowulf was the hero of a poem, and it was an epic poem, and he fought with sea monsters, and later on he died fighting with a dragon. And about Kedman, I have just I have just taken the feedback, and there were a few answering questions. And Kedman is the first poet wrote who wrote in Anglo-Saxon poetry, but he wrote about Christianity. He wrote in uh, about religious things, and that is why he is called Anglo-Saxon Milton. And the greatest work of Kedman was known as Paraphrase, and Paraphrase was actually you can say it is a story from Genesis, from the scriptures, and in this story he uses his imagination and also like just like Milton. And the second one, I'm not giving much time to these writers because we are just doing the recap. And Saint Bede was a second person who wrote, and his most important work was Ecclesiastical History of English People, and he wrote about the people who, the missionaries who came to England, and who came to England from Rome, and all of his works are in Latin, and he wrote about 40 works, and all those are in Latin. And one work which is known to us is Ecclesiastical History of the English People. Uh, and he was also he was the one who uh, told us about Kedman. And Kedman was established in the Whitby Abbey. Whitby Abbey is in the north of England. And then we have Kenilworth in the 9th century. His whereabouts are unknown. We don't know that about the biography of this poet, but we do know that he used to sign his works, and that was the reason that most of his works are known, and the major work which is very well known is the Christ. It is a poem in which it is a didactic poem which is written in three parts, and the first part is related to the nativity of Christ. The second one is related with ascension, and the third part is related with the doomsday. So he is also a Christian writer, but he was not the first one. The first one was Caedmon. And then uh, we go towards King Alfred. And King Alfred, he was a king, and he became king in 871, which is the 9th century. And he was very much given to learning, and he translated from Latin into Anglo-Saxon about a dozen of works, or no, less than a dozen. And these works were about 6 or 7 works, and the most important one was uh, Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. And Anglo-Saxon Chronicle means that it was the history of Anglo-Saxon people, and it was not a history like we are studying right now. It was the history of this the people coming and going. It was just a record of various saints who visited England, or sorry, who visited the Anglo-Saxon area, or we can say England. And by this time, the Anglo-Saxons. Now I'm going to move to the Middle English period, which is our main lecture today. So we need to understand a few things here. The first thing is that after 2 centuries, the the Anglo-Saxons, they were quite diminishing into the Angles, the Anglos, and which were later called as the English people or the Anglos, and that is why when we say that a person is inclined towards the English people, we call him Anglophile, and Anglophile means a person inclining towards the Anglos, and the Anglos Okay, so the influence of the Anglos increased, and everywhere the Anglos started to rule uh, the the whole island. And when I say they have started to rule, it was not a very organized rule like we see today, and it was just a rule which was between two stakeholders. One was the king, and the other was the church. So the church was a stakeholder, one of the major stakeholders, and uh, everyone who studied, he had to study in the monasteries, in the temples, or whatever you may call them. So the influence of church was great at that time, and it was roughly during this time that Westminster Abbey, which is a major church in England, it uh, they established the foundations of Westminster Abbey, and it was towards the south of England. It was not toward in the north, because in the north they had one abbey at Whitby, and north was very much established, and later on they established an abbey, Westminster Abbey, which is in London right now. And Westminster Abbey is now known as the greatest church, and it is the hub of Church of England, and that is why it is very important. And also there are a lot of things which are associated with Westminster Abbey, which I would tell you later on when we reach the poets and the modern English period. So, and now, when their rule was established, the Normans, they attacked the English shores, and there is a major battle at the Hastings. Hastings is the battle which marks the end of Anglo-Saxon period, and it marks the beginning of the Norman period. The Normans were the French, as I told in the previous lecture. The Normans were the French and Vikings mixed together, and they were fighters like like their ancestors. And due to this, because of their fighting spirit, they could not contain themselves to their own country. And if you understand the dynamics of the previous generations or the ancient times, you will understand that they were always short of resources, and they looked towards land expansion, because the land expansion means a lot of resources. And when there were a lot of resources, then you are able to make your things run or make your government run. So the Normans, they felt a need to expand their country, and they attacked England. And it was the Duke of Normandy, whose name was William, and he became the King of England after overthrowing the Anglo-Saxons. And the name of the battle is the Battle of Hastings. It is a very important battle, and it might be asked you after in the exam. And this battle took place in the 11th century, 1066. In the 11th century, in the middle of 11th century, you can say, and it is 10th, sorry, 1066. And it was the time when 1066, which means, sorry, 1066. And it was roughly the time when uh, the Muslim world was gaining its control again after the Mongols hit the whole Muslim world. And during this time, it was not the time when there was, it was the time of the Crusades. The first crusade was fought in 11th century, towards the end of 11th century, and it was 1096. It is the time, roughly this is the time when the first crusade was fought. And now you need to understand why the crusades, the background of the crusades is can be understood right now from this period. This was the period when uh, the church, which was under the influence of Rome, it took a lot of control over the English people or the whole of the island. and their influence was increasing. And why their influence increased? Because they were the main stakeholders, and they were the masters of a lot of institutions. They were the men of letters. They knew how to write, and everything was like an ally to the church. The the church of it was not the Church of England at that time. It was the Church of Rome at that time, and the English people flourished in the Elizabethan age, and before the Elizabethan age, the Church of England was established, and it is a very interesting story why the Church of England was established and Church of Rome was destroyed. So after the Battle of Hastings, the Norman French period starts. And the French period when I say French period starts, it means that the literature can be seen to shift from Anglo-Saxon into French literature. Now, the language of the English people is Latin, French, and Anglo-Saxon. But most of the things are written now in French because it is the language of the conquerors. And a country is whenever a country is conquered, the rulers always wish to establish their language, like the English people established their language over us when they attacked India, and when they were the rulers. And until today, we are under their influence. I'm not saying that this is bad or it is good, but I'm just telling you a fact. So in the Norman French period, we have now a literature which is known as the literature of romances. And metrical romances were written in this period. And as I told you in the previous lecture, that French were a bit more imaginative than the Anglo-Saxons or the Germans. And their imagination worked here as well. And they were already writing literature in French. And when they came here and in this island, they established their headquarters and they started flourishing the literature. And now I'm going to take a break. And after the break, we will discuss. It will be just a short break, 4 to 5 minutes break. And after when I return, I will discuss the literature of that period, the mythical romances, and the other things. Just a bit of break.